I came home early with takeout warming against my ribs, ready to forgive Ryan for another week of late nights and half answers, and found my marriage sitting naked in my living room. Megan was on my gray sofa in my cream cardigan. Her hair caught under the pillow I slept on when Ryan snored. And he had my phone connected to the speaker like the place belonged to him. The music kept playing because nobody had expected me. And that ordinary detail hit harder than the scene itself. My key was still in the lock when Ryan jerked upright and breathed. June. Listen. This looks bad. While Megan pulled my cardigan tighter and whispered, "Can we all calm down?" I looked at the wine glasses on the floor, the ones kept on the top shelf because Ryan always said he could never reach them. I looked at Megan's purse beside the coffee table, open wide enough to show the spare key I had given Ryan for emergencies. Not for my stepsister. That key told me this was not a mistake. Not a bad minute. Not two lonely people falling into something they could not stop. It told me they had made my home convenient. Ryan stepped toward me with one hand raised, already choosing the voice he used when he wanted a bill delayed or a promise softened. Megan stayed seated, cheeks flushed, eyes sharp, asking if I really wanted to make this worse, as if worse had not already put on my clothes and poured my wine. I set the takeout on the table. Both of them watched my hands instead of my face. "This apartment is in my name," I told them, "and you have 10 minutes to leave it." Ryan said, "Baby, please." But the word sounded borrowed. And when Megan stood with my cardigan wrapped around her, I saw an event sheet on the table with his name printed under a company logo she had no reason to bring into my living room. Ryan and I had been married 3 years. Long enough for people to stop asking if we were happy and start assuming we were settled. We lived near downtown Nashville because my work at the convention center kept me late after charity dinners, trade shows, and concert weekends. Ryan did freelance sound work when he could get it. Sometimes a good week, sometimes nothing for too long, and I covered the parts of life that could not wait for his confidence to come back. Rent cleared. Car insurance stayed paid. Groceries appeared. And every time he walked through the door acting tired, I told myself marriage meant carrying each other. Megan had always known how to make being carried look like winning. She was my stepsister, 1 year younger, and she worked temporary staffing for events around Nashville, the kind of job where a calm voice and a clipboard could make a hotel manager trust you before checking anything twice. She filled last-minute crew gaps, moved names between schedules, and spoke to vendors like she already belonged in their group texts. Calvin, her father and my stepfather, loved saying, "Megan has contacts everywhere." While I got the softer family label, June is dependable, which sounded kind until I understood it meant I was safe to overlook. A few weeks before I found them, we had dinner at Calvin and Elaine's house, one of those careful family meals where the plates looked nicer than the mood. Megan mentioned a benefit gala where Ryan had handled sound, and Ryan smiled too quickly before saying he had only helped a friend for a few hours. I remembered that night because he had come home early, complained about a headache, and fallen asleep on the couch with his shoes still on. Elaine's face tightened across the table, but Calvin lifted his glass and laughed. Well, Ryan finally found people who appreciate his talent. Ryan did not correct him. Megan did not look surprised. They let the room accept a version of him that required me to forget the man who had been beside me that same night, breathing through his mouth like a boy avoiding homework. So when I stood in my living room after they left and picked up that event sheet, the logo in the corner did not feel random anymore. It felt like the first clean edge of a lie I could finally hold. After Ryan and Megan left, I did not tear through drawers or chase them into the parking lot. I stood in the apartment I paid for, picked up the event sheet from the coffee table, and let the paper steady me. Ryan's name sat under a staffing company logo I recognized from work, beside a venue he had never mentioned. Megan's neat handwriting marked the margin, changing a crew call from one room to another like she had done it fast. I started with what belonged to me. The lease was in my name, The guest access was tied to my account, and the building had a written process for removing a non-tenant from the entry system after a domestic dispute. I emailed management before my hands stopped shaking, kept it factual, and asked them to deactivate Ryan's guest card and preserve the hallway record from that evening. Then I photographed the wine glasses, the cardigan, the spare key, and the event sheet because every lie in that room had left something behind. Ryan's texts came first, soft and messy, then sharp. June, please, don't make this ugly. Turned into, you're going to look insane if you drag my work into this. Megan's message arrived after his, shorter and colder, telling me personal issues should not damage reputations. That word stopped me more than sorry ever could have. Innocent people usually worry about the truth, but Megan was already worrying about who might hear it. I opened my work calendar from the convention center because I had the right to see staffing records tied to events I helped close. Ryan's name appeared on a benefit gala from the week before, but that was the night he had been on our couch, shoes on, complaining about a headache. I checked another line, then another, and saw him listed in 2 places, close enough together that no person could have worked both. The affair had been loud in my living room, but the first real crack was quiet, one name printed where it could not honestly be. The email from Nolan Briggs was still in my old inbox because I had never known what to do with it. I opened it at the kitchen counter, with Ryan's texts lighting up beside the takeout I had not eaten, and read every line twice. Nolan wrote that he used to work stage crew for the same staffing company Megan scheduled, and after one internal review, his name stayed on hours he swore he never worked. He attached photos of old crew sheets. Not enough to end anyone, but enough to show the same handwriting beside event codes I recognized. I called him with my number blocked, expecting anger, but Nolan sounded tired in a way that made the room feel smaller. I kept copies because nobody believed me the first time, he said, and I sat down before my knees decided for me. He told me Megan knew who needed quick money, who was new enough to trust her, and who would be too embarrassed to challenge a corrected timesheet. Then he said Ryan's name had started showing up because Ryan wanted to look like someone the venues already knew. I did not run to social media, and I did not send some family message Megan could frame as jealousy. I saved what Nolan gave me, separated his documents from the records I had access to through work, and wrote down where each piece came from. My hands still shook, but the process kept me inside the lines, and those lines mattered now. If this became more than a marriage falling apart, every page needed to survive someone asking how I got it. By morning, I had spoken with a local employment attorney and a civil attorney who handled contract disputes around event staffing. I kept the affair out of the first explanation, because I did not want my pain doing the work my evidence could do cleaner. When I described names on overlapping shifts, electronic invoices tied to those shifts, and corrections made after events closed, the civil attorney went quiet. Then he said if payments crossed through the contractor's system for hours, nobody worked. This was no longer just personal, and I should not touch another record without counsel. Calvin called before lunch, which told me Ryan and Megan had reached my family faster than they had reached honesty. He did not ask if I was safe or whether I needed anything from the house, and he did not say Megan was wrong. He opened with, "June, you need to think about what this could do to her career." And I looked at Ryan's boxed-up clothes beside my front door while the answer settled in my chest. Calvin kept talking about one bad night, about adults making mistakes, about how Ryan was a man under pressure and Megan had her whole future ahead of her. I let him finish because every sentence made the shape of their plan easier to see. They wanted the couch to become confusion, the key to become coincidence, and the event sheet to become something I was too emotional to understand. When Calvin said, "Don't turn a private problem into a public mess," I asked him how he knew it happened in my apartment if Ryan had called it a misunderstanding. He went quiet long enough for my refrigerator to hum through the line. That pause told me Ryan and Megan had not confessed. They had rehearsed. Elaine texted after him, softer and almost worse, asking if I could come to dinner so everyone could talk like family. I stared at the word everyone and pictured the same table where Megan had smiled through Ryan's lie while Calvin toasted his talent. I typed slowly because I loved my mother and still needed the truth to stay clean. I'm not sitting at a table where I'm expected to make the truth smaller so other people can breathe easier. Ryan came to the building that evening, but his guest card no longer worked. From the lobby phone, the front desk said he was asking for a few things and telling them his wife was emotional. I came down with the property manager, handed him the sealed boxes, and asked him to sign for them under the lobby record. Ryan's face changed when he saw I was not shaking anymore. "You're trying to ruin the only work that made me feel like somebody," he muttered, and I kept my voice even because the signed receipt was already in his hand. "You used my home, then you used my name around people who sign your hours." That is what I'm answering. I reported the staffing issue through the right channel, not through a family group text, and not through a post someone could screenshot without context. I sent compliance only what belonged in that lane: event codes, staffing records, Ryan's name, Megan's approvals, and the shifts that overlapped or changed after the doors had already closed. I did not mention the sofa, the cardigan, or what I had found in my living room, because anger would have made the cleanest evidence look personal. My attorney sent a preservation letter to Megan's staffing contractor the same afternoon, asking them to keep schedules, email assignments, electronic sign-ins, and payment records connected to those events. Megan answered the only way she knew how, by trying to make my accuracy sound like instability. A woman I barely knew from the venue circuit called and carefully asked whether I was okay, because Megan had been saying my marriage ended badly and I was dragging work into it. I almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because Megan had chosen the same old door and expected it to open again. Then that woman lowered her voice and said one thing had bothered her. If this was just about Ryan, why did his name appear on 2 crews at the same time? That question did what my grief never could. It moved the room away from my feelings and toward the records. By the next day, Nolan had sent 2 more names, both former crew workers who had kept quiet because they needed the work more than they needed a fight. One had been listed on a shift after leaving Tennessee for a week, and another had an email asking him to clean up a timesheet after the event was already over. None of it looked dramatic on paper, which made it feel more real. The first consequence was quiet and immediate. Megan's contractor pulled her from new assignments while they reviewed her past schedules, and Ryan stopped getting calls from venues that had suddenly remembered how to check a roster twice. He texted once, "You're making me unemployable," and I stared at the screen without answering. He had used my home like shelter, my trust like cover, and now the work he bragged about was asking for receipts. The review did not end in a packed courtroom or one perfect confession. It moved through conference calls, signed statements, corrected schedules, and the quiet emails people send when a paper trail stops protecting them. The staffing contractor found Megan had changed closed schedules after events ended, moving real names into empty shifts and letting payments pass as if nobody would compare the times. Ryan was not the mastermind, which made him look smaller, because he had still taken paid crew spots he never worked and let Megan use his name where she needed someone believable. Megan tried to call it a scheduling error, but errors do not repeat with the same handwriting beside the same event codes. Ryan tried to call it love, but love does not come with corrected timesheets and money for shifts he spent on my couch. Calvin started calling people he knew in the event world, asking them not to overreact, and the calls circled back faster than he expected. His own company pulled him into a meeting after learning he had introduced Ryan to a client through a personal favor. Elaine came to see me at a small coffee place near my new apartment, not at Calvin's house and not anywhere Megan could turn pain into theater. She looked older than she had at dinner, with both hands around a paper cup she had not touched. I waited for the usual request. Peace. Family. One more version of me absorbing the mess. Instead, she slid a little box across the table and whispered. I should have asked why she had this. Inside was the old spare key to my apartment. The same kind of key I had seen beside Megan's purse the night everything broke open. Elaine had found it in a drawer at her house, where Megan had left it like a receipt nobody was supposed to read. I closed my hand around the box, not because it fixed anything, but because it finally matched the first thing my body had known. Megan was removed from the contractor's roster. Ryan lost the venue calls he had bragged about and signed paperwork, returning the payments tied to shifts he had not worked. Calvin lost the clean story he had tried to sell, and Nolan's old crew file was corrected after his records matched mine. For once, every person left holding the exact part of the truth they had chosen. The staffing case closed the way real things close in America, not with one door slamming, but with signatures, quiet settlements, and people no longer answering calls they used to return fast. The contractor refunded improper payments, cut Megan loose, and sent a written notice to the venues saying her scheduling access was permanently revoked. Ryan signed the divorce papers without a speech, because by then the same people he had wanted to impress knew his name for the wrong reason. He wrote once, I miss what we had, and I almost answered before I realized he was not missing me. He was missing the woman who kept his life from showing its cracks. Megan did not disappear, and I did not need her to. The last I heard, she was doing front desk work for a private catering office outside the city, far from the rooms where she used to walk in with a clipboard and make everyone wait for her. Calvin stopped calling after his own company warned him about mixing client introductions with family favors, and the silence from him felt cleaner than any apology he could have performed. Elaine came by my new apartment with soup one evening, stood in the doorway, and asked, May I come in? And that small question told me she finally understood what a key was supposed to mean. I moved into a smaller place with morning light across the kitchen floor and a balcony where the city sounded busy instead of cruel. I stayed in event work, but I moved into compliance for another venue group, where being careful was no longer treated like a flaw. Some nights, when the building settled and my phone stayed quiet, peace felt strange enough to scare me. Then I would lock my door, set my keys in the little blue bowl by the entry, and remember that a home is not the place people can enter because they know you will forgive them. If this story felt close to something you have lived through, I hope you remember this part most. Peace does not always arrive loudly. Sometimes it looks like a locked door, a clean table, and one honest life waiting on the other side. Tell me where you are listening from today.